Hope you guys are doing really, really well. Hopefully, everybody's coping with this challenge, this unprecedented challenge that no one's ever seen before. You guys, me, we're all kind of learning together here. But I hope you guys are doing really, really well. I miss you guys. I know this won't be the same as being in person, um, but we'll make the best of it. We'll get through every single day. We'll take one day at a time, and we'll get through it. Hopefully, you guys are looking at this, as an opportunity to learn. Hopefully, you guys are, looking at this as a chance to still learn, still grow, still progress, and still, get through the things that we need to get through throughout the year. So welcome. So this is all new to me too. So I'm going to learn as we kind of go today. So I might be, I might mess up here and there with my clicking and my, going back and forth from screen to screen, but bear with me here. It's my first one. Like I said, it's new for you guys. It's new for me too. But again, like I said, hopefully you guys look at this, not just as time off or time to just relax. Hopefully you look at it as a time to still learn and still grow. And I think, for who I'm talking to, my world history, I think you guys have been doing good so far. I think you've been keeping up with teams and doing what you need to do and corresponding and answering and doing everything by the correct due date. So keep working hard. It's all I can ask you guys. There's only so much we could do over the internet, but let's continue to do what we got to do, and hopefully these online lessons go well. So we'll see how things go today, but we are going to talk about the Industrial Revolution. So let me. There's me on the bottom. Oh, look at that. Okay. You're probably not used to seeing me in anything but a shirt and tie, but I do also own hoodies and shirts and shorts and stuff. So that's a fun fact for you to learn today. I don't know if you've ever seen me before without a shirt and tie on, but I do in fact have other clothing. But let's see here. So if all right, we're on business. So today we are going to do the intro to the Industrial Revolution. So we'll try to keep it simple. I'll try to just get you guys the general background information, just so you know some of the terms, some of the people, some of the main ideas about the Industrial Revolution. You guys have done it now for 2 days. You guys so far have looked at, our do now type of questions where you saw the child labor and you saw what that, young boy was going through and the work hours and the crazy things. So that was some of the negative things that we looked at with the Industrial Revolution. And it was certainly a positive thing for the world as a whole, right? It grew and it became more efficient and the technology increased and the world changed tremendously, through the Industrial Revolution. But there was some negative things as well. And, like I said, you guys looked at that. We'll review that a little bit. We'll talk about the map that you guys looked at of Europe and what specific cities and more broadly countries, were industrialized at the time. Well, what countries were growing? What countries had the most coal and iron? And which ones were growing the fastest? And as you guys know, I'll ask you a question. Darn it, you can't raise your hands though. What country did the Industrial Revolution start? Yes, the answer is England. Very, very good. So it was in England, and then it eventually grows to, Germany and France and Spain and the surrounding countries. Eventually, it makes its way over to the United States. So, again, it was good in some ways, the Industrial Revolution. It was bad in some ways, but it was probably, of all the topics that we talked about, something that changed the world the most. And what I mean by that is it didn't change a country's borders. It didn't change the power, or it didn't take down a king. Let's look at some of the different topics we've looked at so far this year. These are some of the topics, right? And think about how important they all are. Sure. We're down here. Hopefully you guys can see my mouse. We've looked at the Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation and exploration, and then we moved on to the age of absolutism and kings and monarchs and King Louis and Peter the Great. And then we most recently started to talk about revolution. Revolution is just change, right? Revolution is just, it could be progression. It could be overthrowing a government. It could be new ideas. It could be, just a revolution is change, right? So we looked at the scientific revolution and then the Enlightenment and the American and French Revolution. And now what we're getting to is the Industrial Revolution. And I keep saying that it's different. Why is it different? The Industrial Revolution is different because, as I said, it's not countries taking over other countries. there's no war going on, necessarily physical warfare. It's not the American Revolution where America's breaking up with a different country and the Sons of Liberty are tarring and feathering people and the Declaration of Independence is being written. It's not the French Revolution where the third estate is separating from the first two estates and they're overthrowing and eventually killing with the guillotine King Louis and Marie Antoinette, and Robespierre comes into power, and countries, political dynamics change. The Industrial Revolution is different because it affects the lives of everybody around the world, and it changes the way that individual people live. It's changes in terms of efficiency, in terms of technology, what types of machines we have, what types of technology we have, what types of transportation we have, energy sources. I mean, everything that you could think of. But for the most part, the Industrial Revolution changes the way individual people lived their lives. And for thousands of years in history, right, people lived pretty much the same. I mean, sure, over all these time periods that we talked about, and even way before that, there's been tons of changes, right? Over time, slowly things change. New groups of explorers come in and see the new world, and different, religions become bigger, and the churches change. But my personal argument is that the 150 or so, some historians will argue 200 years. Some people will say the Industrial Revolution was 1760 to 1840. Through this time period, I would argue that is the 150 years, whatever you want to call it, the time where the world changed the most. And we'll get into some of this stuff, but think about some of your normal things. I know life isn't exactly normal right now with the coronavirus and us being quarantined to our houses and being on Instagram and Snapchat for probably 10 hours a day. And I'm kind of guilty of it too. But think about what our normal lives are like. Most of it is not possible without the Industrial Revolution. Getting education for 12 years. Education used to be a privilege, not a right. That changed during the Industrial Revolution. Look around wherever you're sitting right now. Look around the room and tell me how many of those items were made in wherever you live, which is most likely Old Bridge, right? How many of those things were made in Old Bridge? Probably not too many, right? Most people before the Industrial Revolution, with the, exclusion of maybe some of the rich and some of the higher people, didn't own anything that was made outside of their city, outside of their town. Think about everything. Think about your phone. Think about your computer. Think about your TV and your sweatshirt and your food. Anything you think of is probably not made anywhere near you, right? How is it possible that we're getting all these things? The Industrial Revolution. Having fruit. I like fruit. You guys might not like fruit, but I do. Having fruit in the wintertime. Unheard of. That is something that would, having an apple, having something that grows in warmer weather, having a banana, having some in the winter would have been unheard of before the Industrial Revolution. So these are just some of the things, some of the ideas some ways that the world changed. But overall, the world became more efficient. The world became more technologically sound. Transportation. So there's so many things that come with the Industrial Revolution. I mean, we're even going to eventually get into, as you see, imperialism, and then later World War I and World War II, even having weapons that would kill more than a dozen people at a time. Not possible before the Industrial Revolution. I don't want to get too graphic here, but the extent of their weapons were what? Muskets, cannons. Now we're going to see machinery. We are going to see mass output of some pretty highly dangerous, military gear, military technology, things that we'll see in World War I and World War II, between gases and between bombs, and eventually, all these different things. So the Industrial Revolution really did change almost every facet, every dynamic of the world and the way things are run. So let's look at some of the negatives and some of the positives. I'll keep it really brief here if I can. some of the negatives that come with the Industrial Revolution, some of the positives that come with it. So why was it a bad thing? What are some issues that people have seen over time with the Industrial Revolution? I mean, we looked at it the other day, but the labor, the kids working long hours, some kid, I mean, imagine a kid your age, right? 14, 15 years old, not going to school, getting no education, working 15, 16 hours a day, getting paid in what today's money would be, maybe $2 or $3 a day. That is what a lot of the kids go through. And you might sit there and even ask yourself, like, okay, would your parent ever let you do that? Probably not. Your parents would want you in school. They'd want you to get an education. What does that tell you? What does that tell you about some of the families, about the economy, about the difficulty of the times, that these families, these parents are not only allowing, but probably urging, probably pushing their kids that are even younger than you. There was 7, there was 8, there was 9-year-olds in factories working not even 5 days a week, working 6 days a week, 15-hour days. What's the math on that? 15, 30, 60 would be 80 something hours a week, right? What does that tell you about the situation that the family was in? They needed anything that they could get. So some difficult times. We're going to talk later about urbanization and the growth of cities. But while the Industrial Revolution is generally looked at as a positive thing, as a time of progress, as a time of growth, there's a lot of negatives that come with it too. I guess you can say the pay gap, the overall wealth gap. This is kind of the growth and start of something called capitalism, which we'll get into. Industrialization is not necessarily capitalism, but the two somewhat go hand in hand. Where we might have seen, the rich here and the poor here. A little bit of this period, we're going to see a little bit of a growth in the middle there. So we're going to see a little bit of difference, the wealthy making more, the poor making less. So, these poor kids working all day, their family kind of needs it, so they're not getting an education. We saw a little bit about their working conditions, about, the factories, the little kids, working in coal mines all day, breathing in the smoke. Some of them lived until they were my age. They were in their upper 20s, mid 20s, dying at 30 from, working in these terrible, terrible conditions in 80-degree, 90-degree factories. So diseases spread also in the factories, not only in the factories, but in cities, because the cities started to overcrowd. So while, and we'll go to the positives now, but there was definitely some things that were negative with the Industrial Revolution. But, back to some of the positives here. It created a lot of jobs. There was a need for jobs. There was a need for workers. It increased production. I mean, everything that you can imagine, from food to cotton to shirts to, linens to everything was done on a bigger scale, a faster scale, and a more efficient scale. This is what the Industrial Revolution is all about. Basically, instead of me and you having to, in our backyards or in our basements, having to make our own shirts or farm our own food in our backyard, now there's 1, 2, 3 factories in the local city that can do it for everybody. I found a stat, if I can have a stat over here somewhere. Okay. So before the Industrial Revolution, guess in your head, what percent of the world farmed? What percent of the world engaged in some sort of farming before the Industrial Revolution? What do we think? Okay, the answer is 80%. So 4 out of every 5 people in the entire world before the Industrial Revolution engaged in some sort of farming, not for fun, but to eat, to get a meal on the table every single night. 80% of the world. That's a lot, okay? What do we think it is now? What percent of the world now engages in farming? Well under 1%. I know I don't farm for my own food. Do you farm for your own food? No. But realize that for thousands of years across history, most people did things for themselves. I was talking before about making shirts, about making their own food, about making just about everything. Almost everybody did everything for themselves or in a close-knit community where they would trade things. Now, almost everything you could think of was being done on mass, large scales, factories, industrialization. And that's what this time period is all about. It's huge worldwide change. Okay. So I already talked about this, but this is the do now that you guys did on your own the other day. You know, the do now type of question. No, it's not the same. It's not the same as being in person, but you guys did a really good job doing this. These were just some, I'll put this up here. These are just some of the questions I asked you guys. What were some of the challenges that kids had to deal with? And I asked you the big question. Why did these factory owners during the Industrial Revolution, why did they hire so many children? What's their thought? What's the point? Think about it. And you guys answered this pretty well the other day. Some of the answers, I have it over here somewhere too. Some of the answers you guys came up with was waged. Yeah. Do you have to pay this poor young 7-8-year-old girl the same that you'd have to pay, a male adult? No. Fact is that a lot of these kids, most of the kids, the majority, the percentages, say they made between 10 and 20% of what an adult made. So think about it. It might not be the right thing to do. If you're a factory owner, put yourself in the shoes of these factory owners. At the bottom line, the end of the day, you want to make as much money as possible. Some of them cared for their workers. Some of them didn't. But it's your choice. You could pay an adult, let's just put a round number on it, $100 a day, or you could pay this kid $10 a day. What are you going with? What can produce the most output? What can get the most work done? 10 kids that you're paying $10 a day for a total of $100, or one adult? So wage is a big thing. I mean, think about what else too. They're young, they're kids. Are they going to fight back? Maybe. But what a lot of these factory owners did, which was really unfortunate and really sad, is they would scare the kids that worked for them. They would beat them, they would whip them, they would intimidate them into obedience. It was almost like slave labor, to the point where the kids, sure, they could have left and not worked, but their families needed them to, and they relied on them, so they couldn't leave, but they were almost forced into doing what they were doing. So they were obedient. And then think about how small kids are. Think about their hands are smaller. They can reach into smaller places. They can clean better. They can, they're more energetic. They can work 15-hour days and not necessarily get tired. And if you're going to feed them, who eats more, a kid or an adult, right? So just overall, it was cheaper. It was more efficient. We talked about how this era is an era of efficiency and how things were, lack of a better word, they're just more efficient. The output was increasing. Kids helped that. Kids helped that big time. Even though they worked in these terrible conditions. So those are just some of the things that you guys did, some of the answers that you guys highlighted. I think this is the longest I've ever talked without someone asking me to use the bathroom. So yes, you can go to the bathroom if you want to. The video. Here is another factor of the Industrial Revolution: population growth. I mean, think about why the Industrial Revolution was needed. Well, Industrial Revolution happens right around here, right around the 1700s. The population absolutely skyrockets. So with a population increase like that, what you're going to see is that you need more food, you need more clothing, you need more furniture, you need more technology, you need more of everything. You need things to be massively produced. So that's another reason kind of why the Industrial Revolution happens, because of just a massive population growth. And this is not worldwide. We're looking at the UK, we're looking at Britain's population at the time. But these are just some of the other things, that contributed to the Industrial Revolution itself. So just a little bit more here on child labor. So I asked you guys too, does it exist today? Is it something that is child labor, is young children, your age, even younger, is that still something that exists in 2020. And I found this map. It's a little bit older. It's from 2014, but the short answer is yes. So the things that we've been reading about, the things that you're going to be reading about, child labor and how kids were subjected to awful, terrible working conditions, long days, long hours, dangerous. Some of these kids we're going to learn about had their awful, awful things, had their hands and their feet and their toes and their hair stuck in machines and broken, and a lot of them are dying at young ages. Some terrible, really unspeakable things. Are these things that still happen today in this modern world that we live in? And the short answer is yes. It might not be as extreme as the Industrial Revolution. Some countries maybe, some countries maybe not. But if you take a look at this map here from 2014, it's really eye-opening, and it's really interesting to see. If you look down here, what do I always tell you? It's the first two things we should look at when we look at a map. The first one is, yes, the title. The second one is, no, not the guy on the bottom left. Nope. The map key. So Child Labor Index 2014 and the legend. So it shows any countries that are dark, red, or even a little bit of orange. Those are ones that are high risk. These are countries, these are places with higher percentages of child labor. And the ones that are yellow or green, they have a lower risk. They basically don't have as much child labor. And everybody defines child labor differently, whether it's a different age or whether they consider it to be slave labor or, whatever, you consider to be child labor. You see, it's pretty frequent around the world. I mean, it's, one that we kind of all know about and talk about. Where's most of our stuff made? You might have said China. You might have said Thailand. You might have said Pakistan. China. Right here, you have India, which a lot of the stuff is made. Even a lot of the African countries. You think about it like this, right? I talked to you about being a factory owner before. If you were going to open up a business, and I talk about Shark Tank a lot in class, one of my favorite shows. If you were going to open up a business, where would you want to open up your factory? Do you want to open up your factory, your production, your warehouses in the United States? Where what? Where you have to pay, what are our laws? Minimum wage? Can you work if you're 8? No, I actually don't even know what the age is. It might be like 16 now with working papers, 15, 16. You guys probably know better than I do. So would you rather open it in the United States where you have to pay your employees $10, $11, $12 an hour? Or would you rather take your production overseas? China, somewhere in Asia, somewhere, could be in Mexico, could be in the Middle East, where you might pay your employees $1 an hour, 25 cents an hour, $5 a day. Where will you, at the end of the day, make more money? And I am not justifying it. I'm not saying that that's the right decision to make. A lot of companies are very proud that they're made in America, right? Made in America. They're very proud of helping our economy, helping stimulate our growth and our jobs and our production. And that's a great thing. But companies might not be grossing or making enough money if they're opening in America. So on Shark Tank, sometimes these people come in and they're like, oh, I have this great idea, and the sharks sit there and ask, okay, where are you going to open up your factory? Where's your production? And if they say America, some of the sharks are like, I'm out. That's it. You're not going to make enough money for me. Bottom line, I'm out. They say, oh, we're shipping our production overseas to China, where they don't mention this, but where there's child labor, where there's all the, where there's not all these laws. They say, oh, that's great. We're going to make more money, right? So child labor is still out there. It's still a thing, and it might take reform in some of these countries, maybe sooner, maybe later, who knows? But you see that America's grown away from what it was like during the Industrial Revolution. And we'll talk about some of these things. There's a thing called labor unions. There's new labor laws that come out and things that change. But as I said, America's kind of grown away from it, whereas some places around the world haven't. So you could see, it's tough to look at this. You always got to look at history from both perspectives. You can see why child labor, it's weird that I'm even saying this, could be beneficial. It's awful. It's bad, right? Kids working, factories dying, and horrendous conditions. But you could see why it'd be beneficial. in the minds of factory owners, in the minds of production owners, in the minds of anybody that's owning a business, right? Okay, so moving forward. And here is the map that you looked at the other day. And you guys crushed this. I think the average was like a 90 something on the questions for this map. So you guys did a good job. You looked at the title first, industry in Europe, looked at industrialization, which was great. The question that some of you got wrong, I asked you the question. I'll ask you again right now. You could look at the map and think about it. Which country on the map looks the most industrialized? What does industrialized mean? Some things to think about here, right? The answer is England, right? I mean, you could see a lot in France. You could see a lot of production and industry, ironworking, textiles, coal. You could see a lot of it, in Central Europe, really not so much to Eastern Europe. A lot is Western Europe, but England would be your answer. You could see England's full, and they were really the basis, the center of the Industrial Revolution. I asked you guys about cities too. I found some interesting statistics about cities on here. Because now we're going to talk about urbanization. Most people, for as long as the world's been around, up until the early 1800s, lived not in cities, not in big towns, not in cities. They lived in rural areas. They lived on farms. They lived in, very, very small communities. What's the word? What's the vocab word that means people living in cities, more people moving and migrating into cities? If you said urbanization, you got it. I feel like Dora the Explorer. Doesn't she do that on her show? Like she sits there and asks questions and then she pauses. It's like, do you know what this is? That's right. That's how I feel right now. But anyway, the answer is urbanization. So before the Industrial Revolution, we're going to play a little guessing game here. Just come up with an idea in your head. Ready? How many cities in Europe before the Industrial Revolution had over 100,000 people in it? How many cities in Europe? Okay, the answer is 22. 22 cities. After the Industrial Revolution, in about 18, actually kind of like 18, even before this, 1850s, 60s, how many European cities had more than 100,000 people in it? The answer is 47. So it goes from 22 in around 1800 to 47 in 1850. So you could see tons of people migrate into cities. Why? That's where jobs are. People always will move to where jobs will be. Even right now. Think about right now with the coronavirus going on. It sucks. A lot of people are out of work, but people are pretty much doing whatever they can to work because you need to. You have to make a living, right? How about today? 2020, how many cities around the world have over 100,000 people? The answer is over 4,000. That's a lot. Granted, the population is growing tremendously, but point here is that during the Industrial Revolution, urbanization took place as well. The massive growth of cities, the massive population of cities. And as you guys see here, a lot of things to look at on this map. I don't want to get carried away here. I could talk about this map forever, but railroads in red, right? Now there's railroads that connect forever. There was not, if you left your city before the 1700s, you were lucky. Most people saw, imagine your life only seeing Old Bridge. East Brunswick is like this faraway place. Freehold is like this faraway place. Going to Pennsylvania, forget about it. If you want to travel on horseback, go 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour, maybe over time. That'd be your best bet, right? People did not typically leave their cities. Never mind, forget about leaving their country. Forget about it. Look at all these railroad systems now that come with the Industrial Revolution, connecting farms to big cities, connecting almost everything. Let me ask you one more question. I actually didn't ask you this the other day. What do you notice? What's a theme of all the railroads? What's something that connects, no pun intended, what's something that connects them? Something that is uniform across? They're all near what? What's the purple? Coal. Look at every single coal mining industry. They're right on top of railroads. Why? Because coal became the new source of energy. Coal powered almost everything. Eventually, there's water that's used, and there's different things that are used, but coal powers everything during the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so that map hopefully gives you a pretty good idea, pretty good understanding here. All right, this is it. I'm going to move my face. Or can I move my face? Can I shrink my face? Oh, look, there we go. I'm like a little. I'm going to go up here. So I'm going to give you guys a couple questions to do on forms that go along with my video lecture. I can't figure this thing out. I feel like an old guy that's using technology for the first time. We'll leave it there for now. I'm going to give you guys some questions that go along with this lecture on forms, but what I'd like you to do is write down today's vocabulary. So there's 7 words here that go along with the lesson. About the vocabulary terms, I want you guys to understand these the best you can. Before we move on, I'm going to move this again to the bottom right here. So these are words I'd like you guys to copy down in your vocabulary section of your notebooks. There's 7 words here. These will help you going forward. These will, I'm going to put this up on Teams. You guys will be able to see the whole PowerPoint. You can go back, you can review, you can pause the video, you can, do whatever you'd like to do, whatever way you learn the best. But copy these down. I'm just going to briefly talk about each word, what they mean, and then you guys will be ready for the rest of the unit going forward. We're going to do some DBQs. We're going to do a project on in the Industrial Revolution. We'll be doing this for probably 2.5 weeks before we move on to some of the other topics, imperialism, and then we'll get to the world wars as well. But again, copy these words down. This is, again, this whole thing should be an intro. I know like always, I know I talked a lot. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys listened and learned a lot, the most you possibly could here. But so here they are. So what have we been talking about? The Industrial Revolution, right? And I don't need to sit and read you the definition, but it's an increase in efficiency, right? There's new energy sources. There's water power, and then there's steam power that's used. It affects almost every aspect of life, and that's up here, right? Agriculture, which is farming, manufacturing, production, factories, transportation. Now there's steam engine, there's steamboats, there's again, there's trains, there's canals, there's everything is changing. The way that normal people live their lives changes through the Industrial Revolution. And basically, 2 words, progress and change, right? That's what a revolution is. It's progress, things moving forward, and change. That's really what I want you to know about the Industrial Revolution. And one invention led to another. It starts, I'm sure you guys have heard of, maybe not, Eli Whitney. What does he invent? Something called the cotton gin. That was a big one. Jethro Tull as a couple of big inventions. James Watt invents the steam engine. So the one invention leads to another, and that's what your project's going to be on. But again, progress, change, that's what the Industrial Revolution is around the world. And it's not changing borders. It's not overthrowing kings. It's not breaking up with Britain. It's changes to our lives and technology and progress, okay? Second word is industrialization. And that's just picture machines making things on mass scales. So it's the process of developing machine production goods. And again, that could be textiles, it could be clothing, it could be weaving, it could be machines that help in the mines. What did I say before was the biggest source of energy used? Coal, right? It's coal. Problem is that coal mines actually flood a lot. So one of the big inventions was to actually remove the water from the mines. That's a big one. What was that called? I have to get back to you on this one. Basically pumped water out of the mines. It was it used steam. I'll get back to you on it. I'm drawing a blank on that one. Okay. Crop rotation, this is a big one. So crop rotation is a way now that farmers maximize their output. So if you picture a huge plot of land, right? A huge plot of land, and you might have wheat on one corner. You might have grain on the other. You might have corn on one part. You might have, I don't know, tomatoes on the other part. Crop rotation is every year you rotate where you're growing things, because different crops actually use different nutrients in the ground. So if you grow wheat in the same spot every year, it's not going to grow back the same next year. So you might grow wheat on one corner one year, the next year you might move it to the other corner, and then another corner, and then another corner. That's crop rotation. And this was a new practice that happened during the Industrial Revolution, that helped, maximize the output. Remember, the population's growing, right? If I had to go back to that population chart, growing and growing, they need food for the masses. So crop rotation helped a lot with that. Me and my dad used to do that. I used to have a garden in my backyard when I lived at home, and we would grow cucumbers and peppers, and we would change the locations and basil and stuff. Now I'm getting hungry, but that's what we would do. Okay, factors of production. This is a big one. These are the things that you need to produce goods and services and output. Britain had all of these things. You need a lot of land. You need labor. What's another word for labor? Work, right? And you need capital. You need wealth. You need money. You need the ability to, you need all of these things. And the Industrial Revolution required them all. So this is what Britain had. It basically is, basically just what you need to succeed in the long run. And Britain actually had one of the other reasons too why it started in Britain, the Industrial Revolution, is because they're one of the few countries that not only had coal, but had a lot of coal, if this makes sense, close to their surface. So it was easier than digging deep and having the mines flood constantly. They were able to basically pull coal out from close to the surface. So Britain, that's just a matter of the geography of their landscape, right? They had a lot of coal very close to the surface. They were able to pull the coal out. Think about what coal was used for. Picture passing a factory on, the turnpike or something. A lot of the times they're using coal. It's coal powered, and they're burning that coal to make their factory work. Steam engines use water, but some of the early trains used coal. So coal was so important. It was like the foundation. It was like what slavery was to the South, which we talked about. Slavery was like the backbone of the South. Without, you take slavery out of the South in early America, they probably can't make it. You take coal out of the Industrial Revolution, it probably doesn't make it. Think about today too. If you take, what am I about to say? If you take what away from today? I would say oil. If you take oil and gas away today, life changes tremendously. So coal was a big factor of production. It's what Britain had. Entrepreneur is the next one. It's just a person. I'm sure you guys know this from finance or some of the classes that you take, but it's someone who organizes, who takes over, who manages. They take the risks of starting a business. A lot of entrepreneurs fail, but some entrepreneurs are successful, and they wind up making tons and tons of money. This happened frequently during the Industrial Revolution. A lot of famous entrepreneurs, people who start businesses, they take a lot of risk. They organize, they manage, and they basically start their businesses, their factories. So entrepreneur is a big word. Again, back to Shark Tank. People on Shark Tank are entrepreneurs. They're starting their own business, right? Urbanization we discussed. I don't need to go into that. It's movement into cities. And last but not least, we'll discuss corporations, which, again, we're going to see now the growth of business. It's not, I'm not spending 6 hours of my day farming in the yard, right? Because someone else is doing it for me. There's a corporation doing that. There's a business doing that. So a business, the idea of, there's certainly been businesses before the Industrial Revolution, but businesses now start to grow. And not grow in size, I'm saying grow in numbers. There's more and more businesses. And then later on, we'll talk about stockholders and how you can buy stock in businesses and corporations and be part-time owners and share in the profits. But a corporation is basically a business. And then we'll get into later on a lot of information today, guys. I really appreciate you listening. It means a lot to me. And if you're still here, I might just be talking to myself at this point. Who knows? But we'll talk about capitalism, and we'll talk about the difference between capitalism and something like a communism or a socialism, and how the growth of capitalism here in the world, especially in America, starts to grow as well. Okay. So that's it. Thank you guys. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you learned something. Let me go back here. Hopefully you learned a lot. Feel free to go back and replay. And I'm going to try to put this on YouTube. We'll see how that goes. But if you have any questions at all, always feel free to reach out. I'm always here for you guys. Whatever you need, you just let me know. Keep looking at all of this stuff as an opportunity, right? I know it's tough. I know it's not easy not being in person. I would love to be with you guys in person and talk and have these conversations and be working, but we'll carry on, make the best of it. Miss you guys, and hope you have a great day and a great week. So good luck. Write down these vocab words, go into forums and answer some of the questions that I have for you guys, and that'll be it. All right. Have a great day, and bye, everybody.